And hello again from WJ Live, powered by the Western Journal. I'm Josh Manning, Deputy Managing Editor for the Western Journal. Joining me on WJ Live today are Tara Snyder, Assignment Editor, and Grant Atkinson, Reporter, both for the Western Journal. Thank you so much for joining us. We've got excellent content for you this afternoon. We're going to be talking about Kyle Rittenhouse, everybody, well, not everybody's, but a lot of Americans' favorite person right now, Kyle Rittenhouse. He has been dumped on and trashed by the media and celebrities, and he has finally fired back. His target, LeBron James. And LeBron ought to be careful because it turns out when Kyle Rittenhouse fires, he doesn't miss. But Rittenhouse has responded to some of LeBron's criticism, and it is pretty brutal. We'll have that for you. Also, new polling information out on Democrats in general. We're talking about Democrat students, and really, who despises the other side more, Democrats or Republicans? Well, one polling group asked the question. We've got the answer coming up. But first, the Maxwell trial is going on right now. Epstein is still big news. And now the Clintons are surfacing again. Man, whenever you kick up a rock and you find bugs and earthworms and gross stuff underneath, you can be positive a Clinton will be there to be found. And sure enough, the Clintons are there to be found 26 times, Tara was telling me. All right, Tara, take it over. Tell the audience what the latest Clinton tie-in is.
Yeah, so I guess we all can't be surprised if a Clinton makes an appearance in some weird, strange disappearance or some horrible
makes
crime.
An appearance and a disappearance.
An appearance and a disappearance. It happens all the time. Okay, I have to stop that. Anyways, so it comes out at the trial that Bill Clinton was on the flight logs for the Epstein plane, and the pilot even testified that Bill Clinton made some trips on the plane and hung out with Epstein. And actually, he stayed on the plane 26 times over 2 years. So for a 2-year period, Bill Clinton was there. And of course, you would think that in any criminal justice case or system, you'd probably want to interview a person who was a sitting U.S. president who happened to go on one of the most prolific jets in American history. But of course, he's never been called as a witness, which is just not even surprising at all. I think I would like to be surprised, but in reality, I'm just not. However, I think it goes to show just how weird and wacky our criminal justice system has become. I mean, we're going to be talking about Kyle Rittenhouse later, and we saw Binger's horrible prosecution and his horrible questions. And so I guess terrible trials have just become circumstance in the United States. But I think that brings us to a couple different questions. And the first of that is why he wasn't called. Now, I think I have my own personal belief. I think that he was probably being protected by the elites and being protected by this monolithic media that's been overseeing the trial. We know that James Comey's own daughter is acting as an attorney in this case. So there's a lot of crossover time and time again. Maybe after Comey investigated Hillary Clinton back in 2016, he maybe told his daughter, hey, give the Clintons a pass this time. And I mean that in all fun. But what do you guys think? Why do you think Bill Clinton wasn't called as a witness?
I don't know. I would call him. Clinton is an expert at not saying anything under oath, not a thing in the world. I was am friends with an old Clinton advisor. And he was telling me one time about having to testify under oath. It was related to some of the Clinton malfeasance in the past. And his attorney told him just every time, just say, I don't recall. I'm sorry, I don't recall. I'm sorry, I don't recall. I'm sorry, I don't recall. Well, the judge finally said, sir, I've never met anybody. No, his prosecutor said, sir, I've never met anybody who doesn't recall as much as you don't recall. And that was just the thing. That was the Clinton thing. Deny, deny, deny. I mean, look, Bill Clinton, there is nobody better at lying to your face, deceiving you and making you happy they just did it than Bill Clinton. I would totally call him for something like this. That's halfway comedic. In reality, there's no way. I mean, look, Monica Lewinsky was of age.
Yeah.
That's a really different thing than what we're looking at with the Lolita Express. Mm-hmm. That may be a bridge too far, even for the Clintons to make it through. The specific reasoning for why he hasn't been called, I haven't heard an excuse for it. But I would agree with you that he's probably being protected.
Yeah. Grant, what do you think?
Yeah, I think anyone who is on this list in this little black book that's been found, most of the high-profile sort of names haven't been called, haven't really been mentioned in court per se, and I think it's the same reason for all of them, is that they're being protected. I guess I'm honestly less inclined to think that it's so political. I mean, he is a Democrat and he is being protected. I feel like just any celebrity, though, anybody with a big name is being protected in this trial, and I'm not really sure why that's happening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there are so many reasons as to why we can speculate why he hasn't been called thus far. But some of the things that I was mulling over is the fact that we aren't allowed any cameras in this courtroom. And I believe that's because this is a federal trial and there's some different rules and stipulations with that. But we have gotten to see quite a bit, at least from just the courtroom artists. I mean, last week, a picture came out about Ghislaine drawing the sketch artist who is drawing her. And these are just some wacky details that are coming out. It's super, super creepy. And the other interesting thing about this is that there's a Ghislaine Maxwell trial tracker on Twitter, and that trial tracker has been releasing different statements throughout the entire time, really giving people fast updates. And I know that they had over at least 500,000 followers, and I know that we were sitting in the office watching this tracker like hawks, making sure that we got the news out to you when you needed it. But the interesting thing that happened today is that this account mysteriously got suspended. And we know that Twitter is going through some changes, and Jack Dorsey is gone. And now we have this new CEO who's made some really interesting tweets before and said some interesting things. So the next question I have for you guys is, do you think that this was just pure coincidence that this tracker mysteriously got taken down off of Twitter? Or do you think it's probably this deep state kind of corruption that a lot of people have speculated towards?
I mean, I definitely don't think it's coincidence. I feel like this is a pattern that we've seen from Twitter with things that they don't like. Anything that's information that they feel like is not going to push the narrative that they would like, it's suppressed. I mean, we saw
the Post and Hunter Biden's laptop.
I was about to say, we saw this with the New York Post and the Hunter Biden story.
But you can threaten to kill Jews all day long.
Exactly.
They're good with Jew killing.
It's just whatever they want to push at that moment. Anything that's not helpful towards that goal, they get rid of it. And from what I've heard about this new CEO, he's not going to be any better than Jack Dorsey was as far as that sort of problem. I think it's actually going to get worse under this new guy. He's spoken out against free speech and said that free speech is too protective and that we should be able to rein it in a little bit, essentially. So I don't think it's going to get any better.
Yeah.
I say, I say that they let people stay on there talking about killing Jews. I think there are examples of that, but I know there's rampant anti-Semitism on there, which is what I should have said. I don't know. I think Grant's probably right. I think Twitter has an aversion to the truth in general. They're clearly pushing an agenda. They are in Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley seems to have been penetrated and permeated by the woke crowd. What's just so interesting to me, though, is that it's this trial. What does Twitter have against covering this particular thing? That's what's really strange. So I was talking with one of our assignment editors earlier today when he was talking about this as a story, and I was asking, well, what the heck is our angle on this? I mean, is the account imitating someone else? Are they breaking some of Twitter's reasonable rules? Or did Twitter just kill them off because they didn't like the information getting out? And I don't know. I don't understand. And I tend to think society generally flourishes the more free information is out there.
Yeah, and the thing that's interesting about it is it's kind of funny with the Epsteins is like right, left, or center. We all can say, oh, Epstein didn't kill himself, and that was a whole like meme back a few years ago. And then
it still is.
And even on Twitter today, I saw someone tweet, just some random person go, this Maxwell chick is weird. And it was just like a screen grab of her drawing the courtroom artist. And so people know that it's just a really weird trial. I mean, some of the names that have come out are Prince Andrew, Bill Gates, Kevin Spacy. So there's a lot of big people to be implicated. I think there's quite a few dozen different reasons why Twitter could potentially be censoring this. But yeah, and it's not the only court case that we've just gotten out of either.
Baldwin was in the Black Book. We have a piece over at the Western Journal detailing the people whose names you might recognize who are in the Black Book. And there are a lot of connected people potentially tied into this. You know what's interesting though? Correct me if I'm wrong, guys. As far as I know, there's only one person connected to Epstein who ever did anything negative toward Epstein, and that's Donald J. Trump. Trump rode on the plane, and Trump, seemingly having figured out what Epstein was all about, booted him out of Mar-a-Lago.
Yeah.
Yep.
As far as I can tell, everyone, Clinton, all of these other people, they continue to be fine with Epstein.
Yep. Yeah.
Trump is the only one who actually seemed to take a stand against Epstein. That's a remarkable thing to me.
Yeah, that's actually probably another reason why they're silent, because they'd have to be like, oh, one of these things is not like the other.
Yeah.
And then it would
Yeah.
bode well for Trump,
Yeah.
which they hate. So.
Yeah, that is true, I think.
Yeah, I honestly don't know what to make of all of this. I don't know what to make of Twitter. I don't know what to make of exactly why they're not calling Clinton. I mean, you guys are probably writing in the comments that I'm a moron. Of course, they're not calling Clinton, but I'm not positive about the whys behind all of this. I do think it's probably deeper and darker and seedier than any of us have even imagined so far. The stuff that they were having girls do there, I would bet anything what we've heard only scratches the surface.
Yeah.
And you know, look, sex has been an easy place to sin for people since the beginning of time. But man, oh man, has it gotten perverse. And the only solution to stuff like this is fixing the heart, and the only way to do that's Christ. That's good. That's good, Tara. Thank you. So Epstein, Maxwell, those are big things happening right now. The other big thing that has been happening over the last few weeks, and looked like it was petering out a little bit. Now it's maybe coming back, is Kyle Rittenhouse. Kyle Rittenhouse was in the news like crazy. He is, best we can tell, he is busy making a list of everyone whose lives he is going to ruin through civil lawsuits. And he's probably deciding where he's going to spend the hundreds of millions of dollars he gets in the process. But he paused. He took a break from doing that to respond to LeBron James. Now, Grant, you follow sports. I do not at all. I do actually know LeBron's name. That's about all I know. Tell us about what happened, what LeBron did, and how Rittenhouse responded.
So LeBron James is a great basketball player. We can give him that. I think that we have to concede that, but he's not a great politician per se. He's got very woke ideas and ideas that are not really always backed up by facts. He says things that he reads or that, you know, the establishment media is telling him, but he doesn't actually know what's happening as far as the nitty-gritty details. And that's exactly what happened during the Kyle Rittenhouse trial. Rittenhouse was testifying about how he had to kill two men in self-defense, which is a pretty scary thing, a pretty traumatizing thing for a 17-year-old to have to go through. And so he was talking about that. He was discussing what happened on that night, and he broke down in tears on the stand because, as you might imagine, he's still traumatized by the event that happened not that long ago. And so he was crying on the stand, and LeBron James decided to send out a tweet that suggested he was fake crying. I think we have that. We can pull that up for you guys. He said, "What tears? I don't see one, man. Knock it off. The boy ate some lemon heads before walking into court," which lemon heads aren't even that sour, so I don't know what.
Is that a drug reference?
I don't know.
I assumed it was a drug reference, but I don't know.
I thought he was talking about the candy, which is like pretty
assumed.
sweet. So I don't know what kind of lemon.
I don't think I've ever looked
but
like that after eating a lemon
no,
head.
I don't think so. It looks like he ate a warhead, if anything.
Yeah.
But obviously, that's ridiculous. LeBron has no idea whether Rittenhouse is actually crying. And I understand LeBron grew up in a rough neighborhood, but for at least the last 20 years of his life, he has no experience going through something nearly as traumatizing as that. So even if he does have that experience, he's well removed from it. So I think.
Doesn't he cry too? Doesn't LeBron James
he
cry?
cries.
I mean,
That's
again, I don't watch.
He was,
but I've heard that.
He was pretty well roasted on Twitter after he made this comment about Rittenhouse, with people saying, "You cry all the time. He flops all the time. always trying to draw fouls when there isn't one to be had. And he has physically cried on the court. He's cried because he cramped up. There's pictures, videos.
He's a grown man with
crying.
a cramp. A grown man with a cramp, and he's crying.
Yeah.
And he's criticizing a boy who is on trial for his life.
Yeah. So it's
Class act.
Right. And so you can see how that maybe would be something that would get under Kyle Rittenhouse's skin, and rightfully so, because there's no reason for him to be acting like that when Rittenhouse is in clearly a stressful situation having to deal with this. He's in court, and LeBron tries to joke about it, make it a laugh that he's actually fake crying. This is a real serious issue, and luckily Kyle Rittenhouse was found not guilty on all counts, and so he gets to walk free, which is what needed to happen. But with that said, people making comments like LeBron and suggesting that Rittenhouse is lying or that he's trying to manipulate the jury, that could very well have had an effect on the trial. And so I think it's fair for Rittenhouse to be upset about these comments. And so he went on a show, I believe it was on Monday. It was a podcast from Blaze TV. He was discussing with the hosts this tweet from LeBron, and he had a pretty blunt message that he gave to LeBron. I think we have a clip that we can pull up of that.
Said that.
Really?
Yeah. I was really pissed off when I said that because I like LeBron, and then I'm like, you know what? You LeBron.
Seriously.
I mean, that's harsh, but can you really blame him after the way LeBron treated him, the things that he's gone through over the past, few weeks, months, even the past year, and now he's free, he's able to say what he thinks, and he is telling LeBron maybe what he deserves to hear? I'm curious if you guys think that that's merited.
Well, I will say that I try to stay away from swearing as best as I can. So, but in that situation, I can't really say that I'm fully going to judge Kyle Rittenhouse because he ultimately was dragged through the coals. His entire life was destroyed. The media is obsessed with making a martyr, and they made Kyle Rittenhouse really into one because people are able to point at Kyle Rittenhouse now and say, hey, like this kid was acting in self-defense, and now we have a sitting president of the United States posting on Twitter that this kid's a white supremacist. He's inciting all of these mobs to come out to Kenosha and riot and say that the jury needs to make the right decision. And ultimately, we've seen that time and time again. We even saw that during the George Floyd trial, which was Biden saying, I hope they make the right decision. And Maxine Waters showing up saying, oh, we know what's going to happen if they don't give us the right verdict. And so I think first and foremost, we have to really acknowledge the importance that the jury played in this, because I think a lot of people were nervous. But I think that it's fine that Kyle Rittenhouse said that because, again, LeBron James has no idea what he's talking about. He clearly didn't follow the trial. I saw even leftists on Twitter saying that Kyle Rittenhouse should be able to walk just based on the prosecution and how bad that case went. And I think as time went on, more and more people woke up and said, hey, it looks like Kyle Rittenhouse really didn't do anything, especially just with all of the weird things with like evidence missing, the defense not having the same evidence as the prosecution, just all of these weird things and questioning his Fifth Amendment rights. So I do think that it was justified. I do think it turned into a witch hunt.
Remember, this is a kid who in open court was attacked by prosecutors. Prosecutors are charged with upholding the law and keeping the community safe. The prosecutors in this case, however, told Rittenhouse, really, he should have just taken the beating that was coming from the mob that was chasing him. And remember, one of the people who was chasing him, I think they all three had criminal records, but one of them had been convicted multiple times of child rape. So Rittenhouse had literally been told in open court, you really should have just taken whatever the rapist was wanting to dish out to you. I think I'm a grown man. I think I would possibly cry if someone told me I had to do that in open court. And then if I had defended myself and they were trying to, the prosecution, which again is there to protect the public, if they were trying to put me in jail for it, that's, and then, the left's messaging on this is really super inconsistent too, because most of the time kids are off limits. Greta Thunberg is off limits. Remember? Greta Thunberg's off limits. She's a child. We can't talk about her. It's not fair. But Rittenhouse, who's someone who went to a community that he had family in, lived in, had a rifle that he kept there. He goes out with a med pack, helps put out a fire, treats some wounds, and then a crowd chases him and tries to kill him. Again, a rapist trying to attack him. He protects himself, and now he's on trial for his life. I'd probably cry over that too. It's unbelievable miscarriage of justice.
I think all the way back, just getting to your point about, the kids being off limits and the sort of double standard there, I think all the way back to like school shootings. I think of people like David Hogg, and he went through terrible things. I'm not trying to say he didn't, but then he comes out saying things that are not true about guns, about gun laws.
He clearly doesn't know what he's
talking about. And we're told that we're not allowed to correct him even. We can't even say that what he's saying is false.
His experience.
Because he's a kid and he went through something really
his
bad.
His experience, Grant.
Yeah.
You haven't been through that experience.
So where's that argument now, Like, why is it only... I mean, I know why, but it's hypocrisy is what it is.
It's hypocrisy. And all animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others. Go ahead.
Well, and I think it's interesting that you bring up the David Hogg thing, and I know that I saw on Twitter, so I can't verify this, but I remember even seeing stuff that like David Hogg wasn't even in the building when the shooting occurred, and Kyle Kashuv was, and then Twitter went off on Kyle Kashuv saying you can't like defend gun rights and also say this is a horrible shooting, and so I think it just goes to show again that it's like certain people like try and hop on these things, and if it is true that like he wasn't actually there, David Hogg wasn't actually there, I think it just shows this immediate double standard because the media doesn't pay attention to the truth of the issue. The media doesn't pay attention to the fact that people have different opinions. They pay attention to the narrative. And again, that's why we're here. That's why Kyle Rittenhouse has been labeled as a white supremacist, because that's the narrative that was promoted by the president of the United States. And that's why Kyle Rittenhouse is getting all of the attention he is now, because people are realizing, oh my gosh, this is an 18-year-old kid who was a nursing student who like got caught up in some bad situations, and now people have to deal with the repercussions. In the media is going to be held responsible for it. And if he does what Nick Sandmann does and goes after them, I wouldn't be surprised if he walks away a millionaire after this.
Yeah, I agree completely. And I think you really hit the nail on the head. The legacy media, traditional journalism, they are not interested in truth anymore. It is about a narrative. Mm-hmm. They're interested in promulgating and propagating a narrative that benefits the left in general. And that's why you have things like WJ Live. That's why you have the Western Journal, because people are looking for alternatives to that antiquated, calcified, really corrupt at this point legacy media. So let's round this thing out. Those are two specific stories dealing with specific people. Let's zoom out a little bit and talk about some interesting polling that has come in. So Axios and Generation Lab polling went out and they asked a number of people whether or not they asked essentially who is more tolerant. Who dislikes the other side more? Do Democrats dislike Republicans more, or do Republicans dislike Democrats more? The findings I thought were interesting and telling. We've got that graphic. Let's throw that up there. Here are the results. College students who would not blank someone who voted for the opposing presidential candidate. So college students who wouldn't, the first one is go out on a date with someone from the other side. 71% of Democrat students surveyed would not go out on a date with someone of the opposite persuasion, as opposed to less than half of that with Republicans. Less than a third of Republicans said they would not go out with someone of the opposite persuasion. Shop at or support a business. 41% of Democrats said they were not going to shop at or support a business run by or owned by someone from the Republican Party. Just 7% when you flip it. Republicans shopping at Democrat stores. Being friends with and working for, that's really stunning to me. 37% and 30% of Democrats surveyed would not be friends with or work for a Republican, whereas it's just 5 and 7% respectively for conservative for Republicans. And so, Grant, they always say, Democrats always claim to be the party of tolerance. These are the people who love others, who, they are accepting, they're caring. All viewpoints are welcome. Yet, when you look at the polling, it doesn't really look like that. What's going on there?
I mean, I think it's pretty clear that when they say that they're loving and that they're accepting, what they really mean is that if it is beneficial to my party, if it's beneficial to my narrative that I want to push, that we've been talking about this entire show, then I'm accepting. If it's not, then I'm not accepting. And that's what they mean. And that's what I've experienced. I mean, I only graduated college, 8 months ago? Not even that many. And I experienced this in school. People who found out that I was a Republican did not like me anymore. People attacked me on Twitter. I had professors who didn't like me because I supported Donald Trump. I had people who told me to my face that they wouldn't be friends with me anymore because I supported Donald Trump. I think that there are two reasons for this wide gap in the differences between Republicans and Democrats. One, I think that it's because Democrats are not accepting as they say they are, and it's because they demonize the other side and they say things like, it can't just be that we disagree politically. It has to be you're a bigot, you're a homophobe. Oh. And also, you can't even stay silent. Here's the other problem. I'm in college. I'm going off now. I'm in college.
That's fine.
And somebody says to me, this really leftist ideal. For example, I love abortion. I think abortion should be allowed. Not only can I not say that's stupid, abortion cannot be allowed, I also can't say that's not allowed because silence is violence. So I'm not allowed to say that either.
Yeah, it's compulsory speech.
Not only can I not say what I believe, I also can't stay silint. I must parrot
you have to say
what they believe, or else I'm a terrible person. Mm-hmm. And that's how it is on college campuses.
Point. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, So Tara, what do you think?
Oh man, I guess I'm not surprised, really. I mean, it's funny because I'm still in school. I technically have 2 years left, and it's interesting because I got kind of a wide variety just between transferring places and things like that. But it's always funny because I have certain friends that I still was friends with in high school, and oftentimes they'll joke because we'll talk about what our biggest flaws are, and my friends will joke and say, "Oh yeah, Tara, we love you, but you support Trump and whatever, and that's probably your biggest character flaw." And I guess I just have to laugh because if at the end of the day that's like my biggest character flaw as a human being, then I guess that's it. And so I guess you just have to take it as a grain of salt. And I think when it comes to like choosing our friends and labeling people as friends, I would say that we have to be more specific with who we label as our friends at the end of the day, because the kid you're sitting with at math at Virginia Tech probably isn't going to be your best friend, especially if they're not like tolerating of even having a different opinion anyways. And so I think it just comes back to like almost kind of protecting yourself and realizing, is this person an acquaintance in my life who I happen to bump into day to day, or is this person my friend? And once you kind of really establish that with yourself, it kind of saves you from a lot of the detriment and issues like that. And to go off, like Grant just said, it's really interesting too when I do have some super, super liberal friends, because I used to have these like super radical, like super leftist friends. And they've literally said to me, what's so weird? Talking to you and interacting with you, it just doesn't line up how you can believe those things. And it's like, what do these people believe? Because it's like, if I'm acting every day with the values I align with, whether or not those be my political values or conservative values, I'm acting with a biblically informed worldview. And then after that, looking at politics. And so when we just group people into being horrible beings because of their political background, you ignore who the person is. And I think that that's what that poll shows.
I think also the other thing that contributes to that wide gap is this idea of the silent majority. We talk about it a lot. I think that's a big part of it, because I think on a college campus, I've never met a quiet or silent leftist. I'm sure I've met quiet liberals.
The most obnoxious people.
But if they voted,
unbelievable.
If they voted for Joe Biden, you will know it. And even if they're not a leftist, even if they're just like a classic liberal who just voted for Joe Biden and they don't like Donald Trump or whatever, they don't have to be afraid to say it because it's celebrated. So you know who voted for Joe Biden, and if you said I'm not going to befriend any of those people, you would have zero friends basically on a college campus.
Yeah.
I think that there are a lot of people who probably voted for Trump who these people responding to this poll might be friends with, but they probably don't even know it because you're not allowed to say you voted for Trump. They might be friends with someone who is a Republican, but that person is probably just laying low and saying, you know, I'm not going to be outward about my political views because then people won't be friends with me.
You know, I wonder how much of this is the difference between how conservatives define themselves and how leftists define themselves. You know, I go home at the end of the day and I have my wife and my kids and my dogs there. I have bills to pay. I have stuff to do around the house. I have friends who are on the other side of the political spectrum and they don't go home to any of that. They maybe go home to a dog, but an apartment, and all they have to occupy their minds is politics. And the only if you're not a Christian, if you're not a believer, that's such an easy way to get significance for yourself, to jump into politics and think, oh man, I am saving things. I'm going to save the world. We can stop global warming. We can stop whatever the case may be. Where, you know, conservatives, but I think Christians for sure, we don't really define ourselves that way. We see ourselves as connected to other people. Our significance is lived out through our family and through our walk with God.
Well, yeah, do you define yourself as a Christian conservative or are you a conservative Christian? And I would say that most people who are Christians and conservative will put the Christian first because that's where the identity comes from. I hope.
Well, and the other interesting thing that I would probably point out is, like, even if you are an atheist or an agnostic conservative, a lot of conservative beliefs are informed from a biblical worldview. And so it's interesting to me because you don't see that same level of hatred and vitriol within conservatism, because I know just broadly within the Republican Party, like if you're gay or whatever in general, like the average Republican's gonna be like, I don't care what you do, I don't care about this and I don't care about that, like whatever. And it's because you look at the person individually and not these identities and not these identity politics. And I think that's the difference. You know,
I think that is one of the differences. The other one, and this I think really is the biggie, I think it's far more likely that you're going to have, if you're a Christian, you're probably going to be either apolitical or on the conservative side of things. Generally, the Bible simply doesn't line up with leftism. And the Lord warned us about all of this. He said, look, they're going to reject you. The world's going to reject you. The world's going to hate you, but it's not because of you. It's because of me. It's because they've rejected me. I can't think of anywhere else where I would see the secular system more firmly inculcated than on the left. So it does make sense that folks on the left would probably reject a lot of folks who are coming out as Republicans or conservatives because, I mean, that's simply what Christ prophesied. And truly, you know, Scripture also says, what fellowship has light with darkness? You know, if politics is all you have, I can be friends with all kinds of different people, but if politics is all somebody has, politics on the other side, they're not going to be able to talk to me about my kids. They're not going to be able to talk to me about church. They're not going to be able to talk to me about hobbies. It's that politics will consume them. Yeah. So anyway, all right, we've run a little bit over. So if you are a Republican, or at least if you're not a Democrat, congratulate yourself. You're probably more tolerant than Democrats who are out there, at least Democrat students. Thank you for joining us. We appreciate it. I was talking with a group of people earlier today, visiting the building. This really is a culture war. This is spiritual. There's a political element to it, but ultimately it is spiritual. And man, the forces of the world are arrayed against us here. And we only continue to exist at Western because of God's grace and provision. And we are so grateful for that. I feel like daily he gives us manna. He gives us enough to get by and to protect us and to sustain us. And a critical part of that is actually you. Many of you out there have subscribed to the Western Journal. If you do that, if you want to do that, feel led to do that, you can go to westernjournal.com/join. That's westernjournal.com/join. There are a couple options there where you can sign up and you can support us for a very small amount of money each month. You can support us, support the journalism we do, and support as we fight back against the left, against secularism, and for America and ultimately for the gospel. Also, if you're watching online, be sure to click the subscribe button. If you're watching on YouTube or Rumble, click the subscribe button. After you click that, click the little, what is the icon that pops up?
The bell.
The bell. I've been saying this for I don't know how many times. All of a sudden, I wanted to say it was a heart.
Oh,
but it wasn't. Click the bell. That'll make sure that you get notified every time we go live. All right, folks, that is it for us. We've got one more this week. That's going to be Friday. For Grant, for Tara, I'm Josh Manning. This is WJ Live, powered by the Western Journal. And we're going to see you next Friday, 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific.